The smell hit Detective Martinez the moment the garage door cracked open. Sweet, putrid, unmistakable. Death had been living in this suburban garage for months, rotting away while life continued just feet away. But what he found next would haunt him for years. A mother's decomposing body, wrapped in plastic, hidden beneath old Christmas decorations, while her daughter lived in the house attached to this tomb, going to work, cooking dinner, watching Netflix, sleeping peacefully. The question that would shatter this quiet neighborhood, destroy a family's reputation, and expose the darkest corners of human nature. How long had 28-year-old Rebecca Chen been living with her mother's corpse? And the answer will make your blood run cold. Before we dive into this nightmare that unfolded in what should have been a safe suburban home, I want to thank my incredible subscribers who make these deep dives possible. Your support means everything, and it's because of you that we can bring these stories to light, give voices to the victims, and seek justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. If you're new here and love true crime stories that dig deeper than the headlines, hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss what's coming. This case will change how you see the houses in your own neighborhood. October 15th, 2023, the call came in at 3:47 p.m. An anonymous tip to the Riverside Police Department. The voice on the other end was shaky, nervous, almost whispering. I think something's wrong at 1247 Maple Street. There's been a smell coming from the garage for weeks, maybe months, and I haven't seen Mrs. Chen in, God, I can't even remember the last time I saw her. Detective Martinez had been working homicide for 15 years. He'd seen it all, smelled it all, lived through nightmares that would break most people. But as he pulled up to the pristine two-story house with its manicured lawn and white picket fence, he felt that familiar knot in his stomach. The one that told him this wasn't going to be just another welfare check. The house looked perfect, too perfect, like a postcard of suburban bliss. But there was something wrong with the air. Even from the street, even with the windows of his patrol car rolled up, he could sense it. That underlying sweetness that clung to the back of your throat. The smell of decay trying to hide beneath air fresheners and denial. Rebecca Chen answered the door on the second knock. 28 years old, petite, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked tired but not surprised to see police at her door. That was the first red flag. Most innocent people panic when they see badges. Rebecca just waited. Ma'am, we received a call about a possible welfare check. Concerns about your mother, Mrs. Chen. Is she available to speak with us? Rebecca's face didn't change. No confusion, no immediate worry about her mother's well-being. Just a slight tightening around her eyes. My mother, she's not feeling well. She's been sick for a while now. Staying in bed mostly. We'd like to check on her if that's okay with you. The pause was too long. In that silence, Detective Martinez felt the case shift from routine to something much darker. She's actually staying with my aunt right now, in San Francisco, getting better care there. But the smell was getting stronger, and it wasn't coming from inside the house. Detective Martinez wasn't buying it. 15 years of investigating had taught him that when people start changing their stories before you've even asked the hard questions, you dig deeper. And that smell, it was coming from somewhere close. Too close. Mrs. Chen, I'm going to need to do a quick sweep of the property. Standard procedure for welfare checks. Rebecca's composure cracked for just a moment. A flash of something, panic, maybe, or calculation crossed her face before she forced that neutral expression back into place. Of course, whatever you need to do. But as they walked around the house, that smell grew stronger. It was concentrated near the garage, that sickly sweet stench of death that no amount of air freshener could mask. Detective Martinez had smelled it before, in abandoned buildings, in cars left in the desert, in homes where elderly people had died alone and undiscovered for weeks. I'm going to need to check your garage, Miss Chen. I don't think that's necessary. It's just storage. Old Christmas decorations, my mother's things from when she moved in with me. Your mother's things. Present tense. But she just said her mother was in San Francisco with an aunt. I need to check it anyway. Rebecca's hands were shaking now as she fumbled with the garage door opener. The mechanical whir of the door rising seemed to echo forever in the quiet suburban afternoon. And then, the smell hit like a physical blow. Detective Martinez had to step back, his eyes watering, his stomach lurching. In 15 years of homicide work, he'd never encountered anything this concentrated, this overwhelming. But it was what he saw that would haunt him forever. Beneath a pile of Christmas decorations wrapped in plastic sheeting and duct tape was the unmistakable shape of a human body. The plastic was fogged with condensation, but you could still make out the outline of a small woman, her gray hair matted against her skull. Her skin, God, her skin had turned colors that shouldn't exist in nature. Miss Chen, Detective Martinez said, his voice barely steady, I need you to step away from the garage right now. But Rebecca wasn't moving. She was staring at the body like she was seeing it for the first time, or maybe like she was seeing it for the 100th time. She wasn't supposed to be found, Rebecca whispered so quietly Detective Martinez almost didn't hear her. She was supposed to stay hidden. Who was Margaret Chen, and how did she end up rotting in her own garage while her daughter lived mere feet away? Margaret Chen was 73 years old, a retired nurse who had devoted her life to caring for others. After her husband died 5 years earlier, she'd moved in with her only child, Rebecca, in what should have been a mutually beneficial arrangement. Margaret could help with the mortgage. Rebecca could help with her mother's increasing medical needs. But the neighbors tell a different story. A story of screaming matches that echoed through the quiet streets at 2 a.m. Of Rebecca's car speeding out of the driveway after particularly violent arguments. Of Margaret Chen, once a vibrant woman who tended her garden and walked her small dog every morning, gradually disappearing from public view. They used to fight constantly, said Mrs. Patterson, who lived next door. Rebecca would scream at her mother about money, about the house, about how Margaret was ruining her life. I called the police twice about domestic disturbances, but Margaret always insisted everything was fine when officers showed up. The last time anyone saw Margaret Chen alive was March 15, 2023, 7 months before her body was discovered. 7 months of Rebecca living her life, going to her job at the local bank, dating, having friends over for dinner, all while her mother's corpse decomposed in the garage. But here's what makes this case even more chilling. Rebecca didn't just hide the body and run. She didn't panic and confess. She created an elaborate lie and lived it for 7 months. She told coworkers her mother had moved to San Francisco. She continued receiving and cashing her mother's Social Security checks. She even sent herself text messages from her mother's phone to maintain the illusion that Margaret was alive and well. For 7 months, Rebecca Chen lived a double life. Caring daughter by day, keeper of the dead by night. Within hours of the discovery, the Chen house became a crime scene. The garage was sealed off, the body carefully removed for autopsy, and every inch of the property was photographed and documented. But it was the inside of the house that told the real story. Margaret Chen's bedroom looked like she just stepped out for a moment. Her clothes were still in the dresser, her prescription medications lined up on the nightstand, her reading glasses folded neatly on her bedside table. But there was a layer of dust on everything. 7 months of dust, of abandonment, of a life that had been abruptly cut short. The forensic team found blood in the kitchen. Not much, but enough. It had been cleaned, scrubbed with bleach, but luminol doesn't lie. Someone had bled in that kitchen, and someone had tried very hard to hide it. But it was the digital evidence that began to paint the picture of what really happened. Rebecca's internet search history told a story of premeditation, of planning, of a mind that had been considering murder for months before she finally acted. March 10, 2023. How long does it take for a body to decompose? March 12, 2023. Living with elderly parent driving me crazy. March 13, 2023. What happens if you don't report a death? March 14, 2023. How to wrap a body for storage. And then on March 15th, the day Margaret Chen disappeared. How to clean blood from kitchen floor. The financial records painted an even darker picture. Margaret Chen had been worth more dead than alive to her daughter. Her Social Security checks, her savings account, her life insurance policy, all of it was being accessed and used by Rebecca. In 7 months, she'd stolen over $43,000 from her dead mother. But perhaps the most disturbing evidence was found on Margaret's phone. Text messages sent to Rebecca's phone, messages that were clearly sent by Rebecca herself, maintaining the fiction that her mother was alive and well in San Francisco, having a wonderful time with Aunt Linda. The weather is beautiful here, miss you, sweetheart. Feeling much better. The doctors here are amazing. Don't worry about me. Love you, Rebecca. Thank you for understanding that I needed to get away. Messages from a dead woman, written by her killer, sent to maintain a lie that let Rebecca sleep peacefully in the house next to her mother's rotting corpse. The interrogation room at Riverside Police Department had seen thousands of suspects, but Detective Martinez would later say that Rebecca Chen was unlike anyone he'd ever questioned. She wasn't nervous, she wasn't defensive, she was calculating. Rebecca, we found your mother's body in your garage. She's been dead for months. I need you to tell me what happened. I don't know what you're talking about. My mother is in San Francisco with my aunt. Rebecca, we have her body, we have forensic evidence, we have your internet searches. The lies aren't going to work anymore. But Rebecca stuck to her story for 3 hours. 3 hours of denying what they'd all seen with their own eyes. 3 hours of insisting her mother was alive and well, even as the autopsy was being performed on Margaret's decomposed remains. It was the cell phone records that finally broke her. Rebecca, we have your mother's phone. We have the records showing that all those text messages were sent from your house. You were texting yourself, pretending to be your mother, For 7 months, the silence in that room was deafening. Rebecca stared at the table, her hands folded, her face still showing no emotion. But Detective Martinez could see the wheels turning, the lies crumbling, the careful construction of her deception falling apart. She was supposed to move to San Francisco, Rebecca finally said. She was supposed to go live with Aunt Linda. That was the plan. But she didn't move to San Francisco, did she? Rebecca? She died in your house. In your kitchen. Another long pause. And then so quietly they almost didn't hear her. It was an accident. The autopsy results came back 3 days later, and they told a story that destroyed any possibility that Margaret Chen's death was accidental. Blunt force trauma to the head, multiple strikes, a pattern consistent with being beaten with a heavy object. The coroner estimated it would have taken at least 3 separate blows to cause the injuries that killed her. This wasn't an accident, this wasn't a fall, this was murder. When confronted with the autopsy results, Rebecca's story changed again. She was going to leave. She was going to move out and take all her money with her. She was going to leave me with nothing, with this house I couldn't afford, with all the debt she'd helped create. We were arguing about money, about the house, about how I'd wasted my life taking care of her. The fight had started over $500 that Margaret had hidden in her bedroom, money she'd been saving to help pay for her move to San Francisco. Rebecca had found it while going through her mother's things, and she'd taken it. She called me a thief. She said I was stealing from her, that I was ungrateful, that I was going to end up alone and miserable, just like my father always said I would. In that moment, in that kitchen on March 15, 2023, something snapped inside Rebecca Chen. I picked up the iron skillet from the stove. I don't even remember deciding to do it. I hit her, and she fell, and she was bleeding, and I hit her again. But Margaret Chen didn't die immediately. According to Rebecca's confession, her mother lived for several minutes after the first blow, conscious and aware, looking up at her daughter with confusion and pain. She kept asking me why I was hurting her, why I was angry. She said she loved me. She said she was sorry if she'd done something wrong. And Rebecca hit her again. I couldn't stop. I couldn't let her live after what I'd done. She would have called the police. She would have had me arrested. My life would have been over. So instead, she ended her mother's life. What Rebecca Chen did next reveals a level of cold calculation that chills the blood. After beating her mother to death in their kitchen, she didn't call 911. She didn't panic. She didn't confess. She planned. I cleaned up the blood. I wrapped her in plastic sheeting from the garage. I moved her body while it was still warm. For 7 months, Rebecca Chen lived with her mother's corpse in the garage. She went to work every day at the bank, smiled at customers, helped them with their deposits and withdrawals. She went on dates, had friends over for dinner, celebrated holidays. I thought I could just wait. Wait until I figured out what to do. Maybe move away, leave the house, let someone else find her eventually. But the smell got worse. The neighbors started noticing. The anonymous tip that led to the discovery was actually from Mrs. Patterson next door, who'd been smelling the stench of decay for weeks, but had been too polite to say anything directly. I didn't want to be rude, Mrs. Patterson said later. I thought maybe they had a dead animal under the house or something. I never imagined it was Margaret. During those 7 months, Rebecca maintained her lies with disturbing precision. She continued cashing her mother's Social Security checks, depositing them into her own account. She paid the mortgage, the utilities, the credit card bills. She lived off her dead mother's money while her mother's body rotted 20 feet away. She even hosted a small gathering for her birthday in August, 5 months after the murder. 12 people came to the house, ate cake, drank wine, celebrated Rebecca's life while Margaret's corpse decomposed in the garage. No one suspected anything, Rebecca said during her confession. Everyone believed my mother was happy in San Francisco. Everyone thought I was being a good daughter, giving her space to start over. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed a woman with severe narcissistic personality disorder, someone incapable of empathy or genuine remorse. When asked about her mother's final moments, Rebecca showed no emotion. She shouldn't have called me a thief. She shouldn't have threatened to leave me with nothing. This was her fault as much as mine. Rebecca Chen was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge called it one of the most calculated and cold-blooded murders he'd ever presided over. You didn't just kill your mother, Judge Harrison said during sentencing. You stole 7 months of her life from everyone who loved her. You let people worry about her, wonder about her, miss her, all while you knew she was dead. You cashed her checks, lived in her house, and slept peacefully while her body rotted in your garage. This level of callousness is beyond my comprehension. Margaret Chen's funeral was held 3 weeks after the trial ended. The service was attended by her former colleagues from the hospital, neighbors who remembered her kindness, and patients whose lives she'd touched during her 40-year nursing career. Rebecca was not permitted to attend. The house on Maple Street was sold by the estate. The new owners gutted the garage, replaced the flooring, repainted everything. But the neighbors say they still avoid walking past it at night. The memory of what happened there, the knowledge that evil can hide behind white picket fences and manicured lawns, has changed that street forever. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who finally made the call that led to the discovery, still blames herself for not acting sooner. "I knew something was wrong. I knew Margaret wouldn't just disappear without saying goodbye. I should have pushed harder. I should have demanded to see her. Maybe if I'd been braver, she wouldn't have suffered in that garage for 7 months." But Detective Martinez, who's seen enough evil to understand how it works, knows better. Margaret Chen was dead the moment her daughter picked up that skillet. Nothing anyone could have done would have changed that. Rebecca Chen made a choice that night, and she lived with the consequences of that choice for 7 months. The tragedy isn't that we didn't find Margaret sooner. The tragedy is that she trusted the wrong person with her life. This case haunts me because it shows how thin the line is between love and hate, between family bonds and family violence. Margaret Chen spent her life caring for others, healing the sick, comforting the dying. She deserved to spend her final years in peace, surrounded by love, not beaten to death by the daughter she'd sacrificed everything to raise. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of this case is how normal Rebecca Chen appeared to everyone around her. She wasn't a monster hiding in the shadows. She was someone's coworker, someone's neighbor, someone's friend. Evil doesn't always announce itself with warning signs and red flags. Sometimes it lives next door, smiles at you over the fence, and commits unspeakable acts behind closed doors. If this story has affected you the way it's affected me, please take a moment to subscribe and ring that notification bell. These stories matter. These victims deserve to be remembered. And sometimes understanding how these tragedies happen is the first step in preventing them. Next week, we're diving into another case that will make you question everything you think you know about family loyalty. A case where love became obsession, protection became imprisonment, and the people who were supposed to keep someone safe became the very thing she needed protection from. Until then, hug your loved ones a little tighter, check on your neighbors, and remember that behind every true crime story is a real person who deserved better than the hand they were dealt. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.